say that people, especially who are working in AI, Christians, recognize that this is our significant moment to step into who God made us as technologists and as Christians. Because this technology is so deeply human, it mimics what it means to be human. I think people see that there's an existential threat as well. And so that's real. Because to me, the question isn't how should I use AI? There's a lot of applications. It's how I should not.
We love what God's doing here, but we also love what God is doing around the world. And I would say we've tried to be as intentional as we can to really bring in a diverse group of thinkers and leaders and people in this space. As we built this summit, it's been very encouraging to see how kind of new pockets of the ecosystem are plugging in. I think another part too that we've really thought long and hard about is the church. We haven't really had the church be a part of what we do at Missional AI. But I would say this year we've seen a lot more people coming from that space and aware of what's going on.
AI doesn't just change the work that we do, but it changes the work that people believe they are capable of doing. We're here in Silicon Valley, in the heart of the technology ecosystem for the Global Missional AI Summit. And it has been quite a journey to kind of get us to this point. What does it mean to you guys for us to be here in Silicon Valley doing this, as opposed to maybe some of the other places where the conference and the community started out?
As an engineer, when I think of Silicon Valley, I mean, just the name itself connotes that this is the birthplace of tech, and it's really driving the global conversation. So I'm excited that we can be in a place that really represents the technology community well. NVIDIA's, like a stone's throw away from where we are. And we're able to draw people from those communities. So I'm really happy that there are people here from big tech who can be part of this moment.
Yeah, I mean, I always come back to that quote we were talking about it in the car drive down here from Kara Swisher from the Pivot podcast. She talks about Silicon Valley being like assisted living for millennials. There is like a certain thing going on here where just the absolute convenience factor, the kind of epicenter of the technology is in this place. We're surrounded by Waymos driving on the street. We just came through a massive Amazon headquarters as what we came up here. It does feel like everybody that is thinking deeply about what's happening in the world of AI has some connection to this place. And I suppose that was why it felt significant to bring the conference here this year. Joshua, I mean, that was one of the big things you were thinking about with the team as we decided to come here, as opposed to returning to Dallas or Orlando or other places we've been.
Yeah.
Just talk us a little bit about how that decision came about and how do you feel now that we're actually here?
Yeah. I think for a while we had always felt like we would likely end up here. For years, we really wanted people from the big tech companies, from the major AI labs. And I would say for the first few years of the summit, that was a struggle. That was hard to actually bring in that community. We really value bringing in diverse voices, diverse perspectives. But last year felt like a bit of an inflection point. We had Barbara from Google, we had Richard from Google, but we got lucky that they were able to travel halfway across the country to come join us. And so one of the thought processes this year was, if we were in the Valley, if we were in California, could we bring more of those people in and, to be a part of the conversation, to help us think deeply from big tech, from the labs themselves. And I think that was a huge piece of it as well, where we could get their perspective and get their insight. And I would agree with you, James. It's its own world out here, which I think, as we think deeply about this space, it's a good environment to be thinking about what are the implications for AI when it comes to missional engagement, Bible engagement, evangelism, all of those things. We really wanted to try to be here to understand and see what's going on at the front and bleeding edge of this space.
It's not always been an easy thing, though, for the church, I think, in particular, to engage with this place. Maybe to engage with the broader culture of technology in general, but particularly here, it's not always been an easy place to do business as the church, and it hasn't always felt like there's been room for the church to have a big influence in and talking into this space. I think we're seeing cracks in that.
Yeah.
But how do you guys feel about that now that we're actually here and that you see the kind of conversations that are happening?
Yeah. So I'm originally from California. I now live in Luxembourg. I live in Europe. But I would say growing up, we, especially in the Bay Area, it always felt like it was its own almost hostile part of California to the gospel, to Christianity. But it does feel like something is shifting at the moment where there are kind of active things going on in the church. There's people who are really leading in this space. And it feels like, those decades of people being faithful to live out their faith in this area, in this region. It just seems like there's something going on within faith communities, both in the church, but also in the faith and work communities as well. And we've been very encouraged being here. I would say that community has really kind of jumped and been involved with the summit this year. And we're guests, like we all mostly live elsewhere, but we really want to, really plug into what God is doing in this area as well too.
How much do you think that might be to do with the way that AI is shifted as well, specifically, not just the openness of the companies or technology in the broader sense, but the issues that AI is presenting is changing the way people think, the way that people work. It's penetrating all aspects of society. Do you think that's having a forming factor on why we can be here doing something like this and maybe not feel as much opposition perhaps as might have been possible in the past?
I would say that people, especially who are working in AI, Christians, recognize that this is our significant moment to step into who God made us as technologists and as Christians. So they're not mutually exclusive anymore. I'm both. And because this technology is so deeply human, it mimics what it means to be human. I think people see that there's an existential threat as well. And so that's real. I don't know that was so apparent with other technologies, but with this one it is. And so people are bold and brave. And I would also say that there are Christians working in big tech that you wouldn't guess. I think I'm always telling people, you would not believe how God has, I think of Nehemiah, right? The watchman on the walls. He strategically placed his children in places of influence because he wants to influence even AI. And I think that we're seeing an outpouring of that.
And is happening for sure. I mean, the other thing that's remarkable, particularly about this week, and even just as we've been preparing the show and bringing the team together is, the world has come to Silicon Valley this week. Not least the fact that, Joshua, you've come from Luxembourg. We've crossed the country. I've come from the UK. The team behind the cameras have come from literally all four corners of the earth to be here to run this. What is significant about that? Why does that matter that there are these outside voices from other parts of the world that are coming together in a place like this?
Yeah, I think when I look at Missional AI, one of the things, if we think about our primary focus and mission being about God's mission in the world, whatever part of the ecosystem it's in my view, many of the most interesting places that we should be looking at, and the kind of the interesting stories that we see are from kind of unexpected places. I think of Eric and his team with Hello Bible in France, and some of our friends in the Middle East who are just doing amazing things. I think one of the things that we really hope for this week is that on one side of it, we can plug into what is going on in Silicon Valley, where the tech is going and where things are headed. But I think a lot of the stories we want to highlight are, what is God doing in Nairobi? What is God doing in Paris? What is God doing in Mumbai with developers who are building this technology and using these tools to do something profound for God's mission? And so I would just say, we love what God's doing here, but we also love what God is doing around the world. And I would say we've tried to be as intentional as we can to really bring in a diverse group of thinkers and leaders and people in this space as we've built this summit and kind of are building the movement as well.
I think this ties into the fact that this is a general purpose technology, and it's being embodied and used in so many different ways around the world. So that's why I think we're seeing this diversity of story, and we're seeing true innovation, right? People are transcending education, their poverty level. It really is a way to equalize.
Yeah, it cuts across all cultures. And I think uniquely it's happening to everyone, everywhere, all at the same time, which I think is unlike other things that we've seen. Now that the world is predominantly not everyone, but predominantly accessed to the internet in large swathes of the world, they've all suddenly got access to this technology very, very quickly. And we know that there's some disparity along the way there, but it is impacting everyone in the same way in many of these different places, why it feels much more like a global conversation. And the community has come together and has also shifted, I think, this year particularly. We spoke about this in the last time that we were together, that we started this conference. This organization came out of the Bible translation movement, from people working mostly kingdom focused technology projects. But the combination of people that are here and the combination of people that seem to be entering in as the year ahead progresses is much broader than that. Joshua, maybe just tell me a little bit about the types of people that we've seen choose to kind of gather for this event that maybe come from other parts of that community mix, not necessarily from where it began.
Yeah, so I still think that there is a sizable part of the community that is still in the Bible translation space, but I would say that the movement continues to broaden out, and we continue to bring in more and more people. So I would say the evangelism focused ministries like GMO and Yvonne's day job and my space of Bible engagement at Biblica. We have YouVersion here this year. I would just say it's been very encouraging to see how kind of new pockets of the ecosystem are plugging in. I think another part too that we've really thought long and hard about is the church. Like we haven't really had the church be a part of what we do at Missional AI. There's a few people in the movement who are definitely focused on that.
But that you mean church leaders for people who are working in a day job in, kind of quote unquote full-time ministry, although we all work in full-time ministry.
Yeah.
But, people who are in church organizations.
Yeah. And just churches thinking deeply about what does AI mean for our church and how we can engage people and how we can reach our community. I just feel like that has been largely missing from our North American Summit. Something that actually in London, when we did Missional AI London last July, there was a lot of churches from the UK, some churches from Switzerland who came and really, were thinking deeply about what this could look like for them. But I would say this year, we've seen a lot more people coming from that space and aware of what's going on. And I just would say we really value the broad ecosystem and the different parts that organizations play, that different partners play, because I think at the end of the day, like we want to build something that's bigger than the sum of its parts. I think if you think about Missional AI as well as a lot of the things that are around Missional AI that we're a part of it, we really want an open ecosystem. We really want a sharing and a collaboration and partnership model of things. And so I would just say I'm very encouraged this year by the broadening of that ecosystem and the people who have decided to come and who are here, that they really represent kind of new parts of the ecosystem. And I think we'll be stronger as a result, as a community, as a global community of practitioners in the AI and faith space.
Well, that seems like a good point to pause as we tell you a little bit more about what is going to be happening this year in the global Missional AI community around the world. Missional AI is coming to London this summer. If you would like to join us in July, we would love to see you. There'll be a couple of hundred of people from across the European region and further around the world gathering in the centre of London to discuss what it means to live at the intersection of faith and artificial intelligence. And we would love you to be a part of it. If you want to get in touch, go to missional.ai to register for your ticket, to join the community on Slack, and to find out more about this podcast and other episodes that we have coming. And we look forward to seeing you in London at Missional AI London. And we're back. I'm here with Joshua Seale and also Yvonne Carlson from the team behind Missional AI. And we've been talking a lot about how the community has changed. But I want to move on to talk now about how we are changing the world with this community. And specifically because over the past couple of years, Missional AI has grown out of this Bible translation world into this kind of kingdom-focused world, and then increasingly brought the technology community into it, who are working out in the secular spaces more broadly. And with that, the same thing we've seen happen with AI, that it's gone from a very specific use case of AI into a more generalized, this touches everybody, touches all areas of work. But it's also now becoming a kind of issue that no one can ignore, whether or not you choose to be in it, using it actively, or just in the ether. And I wonder just to get thoughts from each of you about how we tackle that broader societal impact that AI is having over the next year as we take the show to its regional counterparts in London and to other parts of the world, which maybe we can talk about as well. Just how are you guys thinking about the impact that AI is having in your own context or in your own local context as well, as it becomes a broader challenge and a broader issue? Yvonne, maybe start with you.
Well, I think this is where we were talking about the church, the involvement of the church, I think is paramount. So I can think of the times where, I heard my pastor talk about responsible internet usage. Right. Well, are we talking about that in the pulpit? Are we having that conversation, responsible AI usage? Because to me, the question isn't, how should I use AI? There's a lot of applications. It's how I should not. Right. And this really is rooted in our theology of personhood. Like, what does it mean to be human? And what do we bring to our communities as a result? So if we are just looking at technology for technology's sake, I think there's a lot of opportunity for reach. Like, now language is not a problem, right? I could be a church and translate my sermon into any language. Like, that's wonderful. So in a way, it's removed barriers. But on the other hand, I think if the pendulum swings too far to embracing the technology, that will end up, like in the second wind of social media, where everybody is, entranced in their phones, and you go to a meal and people don't look up. So imagine Claude can talk to me. Yeah. So now I'm not talking to you anymore. Right. I'm sitting here talking to my phone. Yeah. So I think there's the social dynamics that pastors can really speak into. Yeah.
So the church is going to have to reckon with it as well. Joshua, what about you? I mean, you live in this kind of small country in Europe. Has AI come to Luxembourg in the same way it's come to everywhere else?
Yes and no. I mean, I think every place kind of has their adoption, and I think Europe and as a whole can be a little bit more skeptical, which I actually appreciate and respect.
But it hasn't held it back from having to deal with the issue of AI in the broader society, has it?
No, it hasn't. And I would say, like, as a movement, I would say initially I was a bit hesitant and skeptical that we should do anything more than just be a conference in this space and have discussions. But it was actually Eric.
That's Eric Solerier from Hello Bible.
So he at one point mentioned an idea of a Nicene creed for AI. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Like, we need that. And, at first I was like, no, Eric, like, we don't need that. That's not for us to do. But I think I came around to the idea of, like, I don't think there's any other conference in this space that could bring the people together in order to do that. And so I would just say that we're trying to figure out what our place and our role is. But I would point to the AI ethics and standards that were released last October.
And JP, also the Playbook as well.
Yeah, the Playbook. And JP was involved with some great people, along with Dr. Michael Arena from Biola University.
With Scott Mosley from Right Now Media and the team from Stephen from HarperCollins as well.
Exactly. And so, we have that available on missional.ai. Would encourage you to download, think on it, work with us on it, because I think ultimately it's a starting point. It's kind of meant to be an initial, step in that direction of how we should be thinking about it as Christians, as the church, as builders. In my view, at least, I feel like it's probably going to be a 5-year journey that we're on when it comes to the standards, as well as, theological statements and standard certifications. Like, I think there is scope for all of those ideas. And we've talked about it, the three of us before. But I would just invite others to participate with us and give us feedback, help us think about how we can approach this as a community. And I would just say the ethics and standards are kind of our, at least, first attempt to understand and try to articulate what we see that space being. And it was an incredible experience working with with you guys pulling that together. And I think we really kind of see that as a starting place, not an ending place.
Yeah, big shout out to Nadine from the Biblica team for getting that pulled into an ebook. If you want to check out the Ethics Standards Playbook, you can download that from the Missional AI website. There'll be probably a link directly below my head somewhere at the moment that you can look at it, or if you're listening to us on Spotify, you'll find a link to it in the show notes. So do go and check that out. Maybe just in closing, I suppose one of the things that we've seen over the past couple of years is we've kind of reckoned with this AI coming out of the technological sphere and into the kind of everyday person world. And Yvonne, as we were kind of getting prepared for the conference this year, you were telling me about, it feels like there are just more and more non-technical people that are here. Like we've had the vibe coders, right, over the past couple of years. I think that this year we're seeing the vibe workers, kind of arrive. What are your worries? And maybe this is just me, or maybe this is just me revealing too much. Like how much do we worry about like the vibe burnouters, arriving over the next year? Like there is so much stuff that people now are able to take on with what they're doing with AI. How do we minister into this space as the world changes and as work changes? How much of that is going to be a part of this community over the next 12 months?
I think this is where who God created us to be, in terms of personal identity is everything. Mm-hmm. And so the way you use AI and the way I use AI is different. Yeah. So how do I avoid negating my gifts? Mm-hmm. I could just literally, and my team jokes around about this, like, oh, Yvonne, you probably are sitting before a meeting and programming your agents to work for you while you're in this meeting, right? And that's legit. But I had to step back and say, okay, other people are asking themselves these questions. Just because I can doesn't mean I should. Maybe God wants me to do this work myself. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm losing something by handing off this work to AI. So I think the questions we are asking ourselves will be different, right? I think it's going to be moved beyond productivity and back to like, who has God made me? And am I operating in my giftedness, or am I extending that into AI? Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking some Marshall McLuhan here.
Yeah, I think so. But I think one of the things you're listening to this obviously after this show has happened. One of the things I have said this week, although I have not yet said, is that AI doesn't just change the work that we do, but it changes the work that people believe they are capable of doing, and that requires like a rewiring a bit of the brain, right, to think about things differently. And with that change, the way that people see their identity is changing, the way that they think of themselves and the role that they have in their teams, their communities, their churches.
People are really going through a bit of a crisis.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Joshua, like as you think for the year ahead for the community, how do we prepare to minister into that change?
Yeah, I think we need to continue to think deeply about both the opportunities and the risks. I think, in my view, we have to have both of those things in tension. I do feel like I've been a part of conversations this last year that only focus on the risk, and that feels like a huge miss. Mm-hmm. And then obviously there's other conversations where it is almost blindly, like optimistic and avoids the risk. And I feel like in my own journey, there are definitely points where upon reflection, it's like, I'm leaning in a little too much there. Like I should probably, focus on what uniquely I can bring to that puzzle and should not be given over to AI. But I think it's easier to do that when you're actually in it and using it and wrestling with those things in real time. My encouragement to the community is let's continue to sort that out, to think about it together. I think as we are together with colleagues, friends, collaborators, I think it's a good conversation to have about how are we using it. I know we've been with Dawn Barger today, who was just doing some incredibly fun and interesting and cool things. Yeah. And I think that is great in one sense, but I think it's also the conversation of what are the things that we should be focused on as followers of Jesus, as creative people as well. And I think, part of me thinks about, some things with creativity are, I think, more important than ever. I think about the Missional AI brand and identity. And we worked with this wonderful guy in Australia who did an excellent job in kind of the creativity and rebrand. And I just don't think that anything can replace that human element.
No.
What's been interesting for us is how we can apply that and how AI has helped us to, rebuild a website.
Yeah, and scale it.
And in a few weeks, and to scale that, and also to do some other interesting things with it. But there's still something deeply human and deeply creative that is still a part of what we need to do. So I think there's just that tension. I don't feel like I have a clear answer or point of view quite yet, but it is some of the things that I feel like we're wrestling through and trying to see, even as we, do this conference, build this conference. And again, like we are like 5 part-time, 15% of our job people working on this. It's a little bit absurd, like how we actually get it done. I mean, you have a full-time CTO job. I have a full-time responsibility with Biblica, and you're doing 100 things as well. But, I think
I don't know what I'm doing most weeks is fine.
You're here right now.
I'm here doing this.
Exactly.
Which is all that matters.
Right.
But, I think like the reality is just how can we, I think as the church, we really need to wrestle with what could this do that could accelerate and help us do things more effectively, but also think about like what are the pieces of the puzzle that are still uniquely human and uniquely need to be guarded as well too.
Yeah. So good. Well, Joshua, Yvonne, thank you as always for everything you do for the Missional AI community. If you guys would like to ask these guys questions in the future, then make sure that you are subscribed to wherever you are listening to or watching the podcast. Drop your comments below. We will be reading all of them. So do leave those comments. And if you would like to get more involved, head to missional.ai to find out more about upcoming events and also to download the ebook, as well as also other resources coming out in the rest of 2026. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.